Hello, sports fans. I was listening to a YouTube on the effects of the internet and programming on our liberties, and also the taking of our liberties. And most recently, there's been a lot of talk about countries getting rid of totalitarian regimes and the like. And essentially, it's amazing to me how we are celebrating liberty for other nations like Egypt, and a lot of people are. No one seems to be celebrating the liberty for the Iraqis. In fact, they're pissed off we went to Iraq, but the same people who are pissed off that we went into Iraq and went into Afghanistan are so happy that the Egyptians, quote, have liberty, and that Al Qaeda operatives are trying to knock off the dictator Gaddafi. And yet, over here, our elected officials in this democracy are trying to take away our constitutional rights. In fact, this whole thing about Obamacare forcing me to buy a product, forcing me to spend my money on health insurance against my will, against my beliefs, it's very interesting that the same people who are for liberating Libya are for making me into a slave for Mr. Obama. It's a very interesting, thought. Now I know that if you're a good communist or a good socialist, you have to look out for the good of the many versus the good of the few. And yet, when it comes to certain things, it will inconvenience the entire population just for the good of a few. So it all depends where your agenda is. And I really feel that there's something rather strange going on in this mentality that we have of wishing liberty for other people and yet taking away my liberties. And this whole, what would you call it, Homeland Security laws, where they can put you away just because they want to put you away. They don't have to charge you with anything. It's all very bizarre. That's if you actually want to take the time and think about it. Whether you want to take the time and think about it, that's very questionable. But in any event, um, after hearing this video about the internet and how it can be a good force or a bad force, and you realize too that they already have the right in this country to shut down the internet if they choose to. I mean, shut it down cold. Whereas when they did that in Egypt, all of you folks were aghast at the concept of someone doing that. Of course, they do it in China. They filter things in China. And in fact, they do a lot of filtering because you can watch certain movies in certain countries, you can't watch them in other countries. But China specifically does a lot of filtering and is partially shutting down the internet from the standpoint of where you can search, what you can look at. But in the United States, they can shut down the whole thing for the cause. So if a bunch of people got really upset with the government and things started getting hairy for the government, they could shut the whole thing down. And probably the media wouldn't say a thing. The media says a lot of things when other people do things, but when Obama does something, um, it's no big deal. Nothing's a big deal when we're doing something um, for the Democrats. Everything's a big deal when the Republicans do anything. And I'm not sticking up the Republicans because we haven't gotten to where we are right now today, unless both the Democrats and the Republicans, both the major parties, were bought and paid for to accomplish what they want to do. They were talking about Eisenhower, talking about warning us about the military-industrial complex. And yet, you would think that after that warning, that there would be hearings about this in the Senate and Congress about what the heck he was talking about. I would really like to know if the media actually took the time to interview Eisenhower about what the hell he meant about the military-industrial complex. It just seems he gave his farewell speech, and as he was leaving in his farewell speech, he warned us about the military-industrial complex. So don't you think it's strange that apparently they had no hearings about this? I will do some research to see if there are any articles written by Eisenhower talking about it. I don't know if he talked about it in his biography. It's very interesting. And where this really came about, it's very interesting that Kennedy wanted not to get involved in the Vietnam situation, didn't want to commit our troops, although he did send some advisory people there. But just when he was really getting ourselves ready to pull out of Vietnam, he got killed. And all of a sudden, Johnson totally reversed what Kennedy wanted to do. Within 24, 48 hours, we were in the posture of not pulling out of Vietnam, but going into it. And guess who made a lot of money on that? Lady Bird Construction. Lady Bird Construction. Lady Bird. That's Lyndon Johnson's wife. So Lady Bird Johnson built all these bases all over during the war, and every minute that war was going on, she was making more and more money. And by the time she died, the name was no longer Lady Bird Construction. It became Halliburton. Ever hear that name? Of course, you associate it with the nasty Republicans, right? All the fascist, right-wing, warnicks Republicans, but everybody's used Halliburton. Clinton used Halliburton. Every administration used Halliburton. And when Lady Bird Johnson died, she was, I think, the largest shareholder of Halliburton. So how do you think that took place? Because they were one and the same. And in fact, Halliburton is doing more work for Iran, as far as getting oil out of the ground, than it is for Iraq. So they're truly an international company with no allegiance to any particular country. They are mercenaries making money, which is no big deal. But the fact that they have no allegiance to the United States, and we're worried about what they do over in Iraq or whatever they do. If they have their private guards killing people, well, they'll kill people for Iran, or they'll kill people for their interests in Iraq. And like I said, the company links back to Lady Bird Johnson, and that is LBJ. Now, one of the most disturbing things to me about LBJ, other than killing 50,000 young Americans and millions of Vietnamese, and the fact that we let that whole thing go down as a result of Nixon getting impeached, and Gerald Ford really not giving a crap about it, is what we're going to say here about the war, getting out of the war. Well, I lost the thought, and I'm sure I'll think of it when I hang up. But in any event, I just want to end this thing with the fact that the same people who are hoping for liberty in other countries don't give a crap about my liberty of not wanting to buy mandatory health insurance. It doesn't matter what resources I have to pay for my own illnesses. It doesn't matter what my feelings are about treating my own illnesses. It doesn't seem to matter that I am forced to buy a health insurance policy which would offer treatments which I would never use. And the government wants to tell me how I'm going to spend my money on my last days on either medications or enjoying myself the best I can, whether it's going to see a a beautiful canyon, or seeing going down to the beach, or whatever I want to do, or to get in a sailboat and go out into sea when I'm ill. But they assume that I am guilty. They assume that I'm going to be a burden to society. So I'm guilty. I'm not innocent until proven guilty. I am guilty just by the fact that I'm alive. If you want to carry this any further, you could always take the position with these people who are Obama drones, that why not force everybody to get burial insurance? We're all going to die, right? So if we're all going to die, how do we know the person has enough money to take care of their burial? Right? They shouldn't be a burden to society, so everybody should have to have burial insurance for everybody in their family, I would think, right? Otherwise, you could be a burden on society. This is what we're going to. And of course, the simple-minded people say, well, you have to get car insurance, right? Well, that's if you have a car. They don't force people to buy car insurance, but maybe they should force everybody to buy car insurance who doesn't have a car, because you never know when you're going to steal a car, right? I mean, after all, you're guilty until proven innocent around here, at least in certain cases. So that's my thought. Take care. Bye-bye.